In 2009, he founded the Czech Free Citizens Party and was elected its leader, and I am delighted that he's agreed to come to speak to us today. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Dr. Peter Mack.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, dear Nigel, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased and honored to have been invited to this conference to speak here along with your distinguished speakers and to address an audience with whom I share fundamental political ideas of freedom and national independence. I come from the Czech Republic, representing a small, recently established political party called the Free Citizens Party. My party is very similar to yours, not only in its attitude towards the European Union, but also regarding taxation, energy and other issues. So now we promote the ideas of freedom and national independence alongside you. We are happy that we are not alone, that we can look up to UKIP for us a role model party which has taught us that standing firmly for the ideas of independence and freedom is not only a good thing, it is also viable. You have succeeded in the European Parliament elections, and your success and increasing popularity prove that one day, through persistence and political steadiness, we can also succeed. So let me start with a basic observation regarding the very substance of the European Union. The EU is based on the assumption that the Central Commission in Brussels knows better than millions of individuals what is good for them. This could be theoretically true if the Commission were endowed with divine intelligence, but I am afraid that this is not the case. In normal circumstances, humankind is protected against such conceit by separation of powers and by diversity of the centers of political decision-making. But the EU is based on centralization and on oppression of interjurisdictional competition. Therefore, the possible mistakes of the EU have more serious consequences than those of a national government, which is subject to the separation of powers and competitive environment. If my government, for instance, makes a mistake, say in its fiscal or economic or immigration policy, it can have bad consequences for me and my fellow citizens. But as for other nations, they are not only safe from our mistakes, they can even learn from them. However, if the EU makes a mistake in its policy, then not only it falls upon 500 million people, but it is also very difficult to recognize. Without being able to compare different policies, we can hardly recognize the drawbacks of the EU regulation. If a baker at the corner makes bad bread, we can go to the shop of his competitor. If the EU makes bad legislation, there is no escape. The EU is based on the increasing monopolization of power, and this lack of competition increases the number of bad decisions. Instead of monopolization, we need competition and freedom to choose. We need tax competition, monetary competition, as well as a variety of energy and immigration policies. We need independent nations in Europe instead of a monopolistic superstate. We have learned that the EU is not reformable. It is causing more and more damage. Therefore, The only way to reintroduce accountability, healthy competition and freedom is a unilateral secession from the EU. My second remark, or second observation, is about the future prospects of the EU. Big empires have always eventually destroyed themselves, but by huge bureaucracy and inability to enforce their own rules. The EU still exists, but more and more individuals and member states don't comply with its rules. No one is keeping the budget deficit in line with the so-called Stability and Growth Pact, for instance. The Eurozone member states are pouring money to Greece despite the explicit ban of financial assistance embedded in the treaties. These are clear symptoms that the EU is approaching its own end. One day, the President of the European Union, Mr. Rompuy, will end up like the last President of the Soviet Union. One beautiful day, Mr. Gorbachev found that he was the President of a virtual entity that all members had left. He simply stopped receiving his salary. And I look forward to the day that Mr. Rompuy finds he is not able to get any more money from us.
I'm sorry that I can't be with you, but here's a message from a friend in Brussels, and believe me, the Czech Republic hasn't got many friends in Brussels.